Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for joining us again today. It has been a hot minute, and I apologize for the lack of updates. We have the eels today and a larger tank update. It's just been crazy busy, and I've been working on something reef related on the side that hopefully we can debut next month, so stay tuned for that. The eels, after drip acclimating, went into quarantine, and I originally built this kind of PVC scaffold to try to use less sand and give them each a burrow and make it easier to get them out, because these risers just kind of come out, thinking I could just get the eels out a little bit easier than having to dig them out of the sand when I wanted to transfer them, and that was a complete fail. Lessons learned there, but a good example of perhaps me trying to make things more complicated than they should be. The eels just didn't want to find those kind of individual burrows and ended up just having to add a bunch of sand into the quarantine system for them. So that worked out, but lessons learned there. And I originally ordered 3 eels. One came in pretty rough and actually died within an hour, which is unfortunate. My impression is that these guys are not good shippers, so take that into account. And they went into quarantine, and actually once they were feeding, they've been pretty healthy. They are similar to mandarins in that they have a heavy slime coat and no scales. So I think that they are probably more resilient to external parasites, and quarantining is probably more about getting them to feed. I did do my basic general cure for internal parasites. They actually use their external slime coat to coat the inside of their burrows to reinforce them, and so that kind of demonstrates how thick their slime coat may be, and they're probably a little bit more resistant to ick and other external parasites. But these guys are just super cute and super cool, I have to say. Been wanting to keep these for a while, and they do not disappoint. They are incredibly shy. Hopefully that will diminish over time as they get used to people watching them close to the tank and kind of just get used to their surroundings. I'm also hoping that once I get a full complement of 5 or 6 of them and they perhaps feel like they're more in a colony like they normally would be, they'll be a little bit more out and about more often. But they are pretty shy. They're even scared of a camera that I set up. So it was challenging to get footage of them, but they are super cute. So in quarantine, what I would do is I was feeding them about 4 or 5 times a day, and I put a heater in the tank as well as in the sump. So I would turn off the circulation down into the sump on the quarantine tank and put in a cube of calanus, frozen calanus, and just let it circulate for an hour, and I would do that 4 or 5 times a day. And they were just, and I would walk away from the tank. I set up a camera a couple times, and they eventually got used to it, so I got some footage of them, but they were just chomping on calanus for 4 or 5 hours a day, which is their normal behavior as planktonivores. So after about 6 weeks in quarantine, I added them into the eel tank, and they kind of chilled on the sand for a while. I thought they would burrow much more quickly, but they kind of just hung out for a while. And I eventually moved them off of calanus and onto hikari mysis, which is kind of a smaller mysis shrimp, smaller than the PE mysis. And there goes one finally burrowing there. And just to demonstrate kind of, this is the tank pretty much today, and you can see that the circulation pattern that I set up with the MP40s in the back there works very, very well. It circulates the shrimp really without many going down the overflow at all, and just in the circular pattern that takes them up and over the sand bed constantly. The eel that is out right now is the is the bold one, and the shy one will hardly ever come out if I'm near the tank, or especially if I've got a camera set up. So I'm hoping if we get some, maybe 3 or 4 more eels to make a colony, that they'll feel more comfortable kind of poking their heads out more often. But yeah, the circulation is working really well, and they're eating well, and it's been a learning curve, I think, but building my confidence in taking care of this species, and we'll be getting 3 or 4 more, I think, pretty soon. So you also notice there's a Tamini tang in this tank, which I might have skipped over. She came in with the rest of the tang gang and is a great addition for this 100-gallon tank. She'll stay on the smaller side. She got Popeye when she came in. Popeye is just kind of a bulging eye. You've you may have seen before. It comes in two forms usually. One is white and pussy and is bacterial. You have to treat it with antibiotics. The other type has more of a silvery color to it, and it's actually just a gas bubble. And you can actually essentially bleed that air bubble by just using a very, very fine hypodermic needle. The footage was very hard to get, so I apologize, guys. But if you're not squeamish, you can do this yourself. It's actually not too difficult. And she's been perfect ever since, so something to consider. We also got a large load of corals into quarantine, some more zoas, some Euphilia, some Acropora, tester frags, and a bunch of acans or micromusa if you're up on the scientific literature. And these were in here for about 6 weeks, which is about as long as I can do it. I have trouble with cleanup crew in quarantine because when you start the quarantine from scratch, there's nothing to eat, and if you add them later in the process, it kind of restarts the clock. So after 6 weeks, they go into the tank. And here's the tank as it is today, about 9 months in. And things are looking pretty good, you know, still have some growing pains here and there. All the rock is now covered with coralline, which is great. Getting some pretty good growth. Some of these Duncan and Euphilia have all added extra heads, as well as some of these torch. We've had probably 3 or 4 Acropora tester frags bite the dust, but the ones that have remained are looking pretty good. They've been basing out and starting to show some growth finally. And so we'll probably end up getting a big load of Acropora frags finally in the next month or 2 to fill out the tank. I have been battling red cyano for the last 3 or 4 months, basically all winter. I treated once with red cyano RX, which helped, but it did come back. And you know, it's just kind of the new tank growing pains. The tank's got great flow. Nutrients have been rock solid at 0.03 for phosphate and 5 parts per million for nitrate this entire time. And any lower than that, to try to starve out the cyano, I would worry about the corals. So I think it's ebbing. I'm, you know, fighting the good fight. I'm adding Microbacter 7 regularly and manually removing it, and we'll just see how it goes. The zoa wall has been going gangbusters. You know, all these zoas or pallies came in 1 or 2 polyp frags, and now a lot of them have 25, 50, even 100. So that's showing some really great growth there. And you notice in the center here, there are a couple pallies, I think a purple monster and a Nirvana pallies that have really exploded in growth. And the great thing about the zoa wall is I can then take out these pieces, frag them, or put them elsewhere, put in new pieces into the zoa wall to try to keep everything kind of balanced and prevent one zoa from really overgrowing and taking over the zoa wall. I really want it to be kind of a very balanced pastiche of different colors and different zoas. So the system of the frags and the egg crate I think will really work well long term. All the fish have been doing really well. Their growth rates has been pretty astonishing. Especially this sailfin tang has almost doubled in size. They all seem to be getting along great. They're fat and really stunning. You know, I, like a lot of people, really focus on corals more than fish, but I've been really enjoying all these beautiful fish. During the winter where I live, deliveries are very unreliable with all the snow. So ordering livestock kind of takes a back burner in the winter, and that combined with kind of my battle with cyano, other than a big load of corals at the beginning of the winter, there hasn't been a lot of additions. But now that the snow is gone up here in the mountains and delivery will be more reliable, we'll be finishing our stocking plan in terms of fish, and also starting to get some more Acropora frags in here to really flesh out the tank. And because we're going to be adding more stony corals pretty soon, the next thing we're going to build is the calcium reactor. And I've been pretty astonished by the alkalinity and calcium demand of the tank. Because we have very few stony corals. We're dosing 5,500 milliliters of Kalkwasser and about 450 milliliters of calcium and alkalinity 2-part every single day. And you know, we've got maybe 10 Acropora frags and 20 LPS frags in here. And so, you know, as things start to fill out, I think we're gonna need a calcium reactor pretty soon. So the last thing I want to talk about is maybe get some advice and suggestions from you guys about cameras. I'm not really happy with the footage I'm getting from either my phone or my DSLR. I've got a DSLR that and a kind of underwater photography rig that I've done a lot of scuba diving with, and it actually takes great stills, but it's not that great for video. So if you guys have any advice on, you know, a new DSLR that takes great video, or a mirrorless camera setup, you know, I'd love to hear it from you in the comments. I'm going to be hopefully shopping soon for something that can really get some really crisp, fantastic footage of the reef, because I just want to make it sing. So that's it for now. Thanks again for stopping by. Hope everyone has a good beginning to their spring, and happy reefing.